It can only be attributable to human error.
You're entering paranormal.
He meddled in things that you people. He meddled in
Slug.
things. He meddled in things.
Where will we go next? It's a phantom from another time.
No one, Mr. Mulder.
That's it, man. Game over, man. Game over.
That is one big pile of shit.
Hello everyone, welcome to a new episode of Cryptid Campfire. Today I am joined by Seth Breedlove. How you doing today, Seth?
I'm good. Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Seth Breedlove is a filmmaker, and in my opinion, he's at the top of the cryptid food chain, killing the game with his excellent Small Town Monsters movies. The most recent releases are On the Trail of UFOs. Wow, I can't believe blanked, but I'll come up with a list eventually.
Just make up a name. Just like make up a title.
Well, on the Trail of Bigfoot, On the Trail of UFOs, and Momo, the Missouri Monsters are some of my favorites. And so that's what we're here to discuss, man. We're here to discuss filmmaking and the cryptozoology world.
Cool. That's that's the name of the game with us is cryptids and filmmaking. And cool. It's good to hear that you enjoyed Momo because that's one of my favorites. That might be my favorite. I think I've said that's like my favorite filmmaking experience was making Momo. Just like creatively. Probably not my favorite like shoot. It was pretty much stress nonstop. But yeah, in terms of like creativity, the creativity flowed like wine on the Momo shoot. One of my favorite things about Momo too is that people are split on it. So it's like people either hate it or love it, and we've never made a movie that had that reaction from people. Like I've seen people say, well, this is kind of dull or this one didn't do it for me. I've never seen one where people like despise it or love it, and Momo was the first to do that. So I'm really happy about that fact. Like we kind of knew going into it that Momo would split people one way or the other because you either get it or you don't get it at all. And
That's what I was about to say, is that the people who probably despise it just don't get it. They don't get what you were trying to do.
yeah, and two, like even if you get it, there's a lot buried in it that some people still haven't got. Like I still think it's funny we made a parody of like Cryptid television that with like Lyle's TV show and the way he behaves and acts in it. I mean, in a way, he's like parodying himself. And I just think it's funny. Like so many aspects of it are flying under the radar. Like even today, Zach. Sometime at like some point after we shot it, or he had seen the rough cut or something, he said it's a really interesting mix of like highbrow and extreme lowbrow. Like it has like a lot to say about story and our culture and stuff like that. And then it's also just a silly B movie, alongside a movie about a very serious documentary retelling of the Momo story. So it is like it's not bipolar. I don't want to say it's bipolar because the moods don't shift. I think the transitions between the shifts are pretty obvious. But it's a very it's definitely the most interesting thing we've ever made.
Yeah, I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm a big fan of The Legend of Boggy Creek and just kind of the drive-in B-movie horror films that you were so obviously ripping off. Or I guess ripping off is loosely used there.
Ripping off, fine. Yeah,
Okay.
I think like Legend of Boggy Creek, I think I watched Creature from Black Lake far more than Legend of Boggy Creek. I don't even know if I watched Legend of Boggy Creek during the making of Momo. I watched Creature from Black Lake, and then I watched a lot of the 70s docs. You know, the stuff that I love to watch anyway. So like Mysterious Monsters and
Sure.
Man Beast and Bigfoot Manor Beast and all those, you know, like the In Search of stuff.
Yeah.
There's a doc that Robert W. Morgan is in called In Search of Bigfoot that has no relation to In Search of. Um, that's also a really good one that I watched a lot. So there's, yeah, like pretty much anything 70s I could get my hands on, whether it was Bigfoot related or not. And the weird thing about that movie too is like I'm used to kind of like what we were talking about before we started recording is that I typically work very it's not structured at all. Like
Yeah.
I get the structure of the story in the edit. Um, with Momo, we had the whole movie scripted, so you know
Yeah.
we knew what we were doing, and it ended up being almost exactly what we had envisioned for it. So we knew going into it, it would be a polarizing movie,
Mm.
and we did it anyway, which is kind of like I mean, at this point, we're working on our 11th movie, you know, with Bell Witch, and we've also done the 3 miniseries, so we're at like 15 productions once you count case files and all that stuff.
Mm.
So like at this point, I like feedback on things, but any sort of feedback that is geared around you need to remove local history from the movie, which is like sort of the most common thing I hear back from people is like, you don't get to the monster soon enough. I just ignore it at
Mm.
this point because to me it's like it kind of for me to remove that stuff is to basically gut what makes our stuff what it is, you know, like what
Right.
separates our stuff from the rest. Because I'm not really that concerned with monsters, in all honesty.
Sure.
Like my whole
You're
thing is
you're small town monsters. You're not just monsters.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, so it's like storytelling is really interesting to me. So I want to explore that. I want to explore small towns and how they respond to this stuff. Um,
Sure.
and then like the human side of the story. But like, so you saw Mothman Legacy. The most common thing I heard back very early on, like the most common bit of criticism I was hearing early on from people that were watching it was, um, it doesn't get to the Mothman quick enough.
Mm.
So you know, like I did. I'm sure you know that the movie opens, you know, with pretty spoilers for a movie that doesn't come out 2 months for another 2 months. By the way, dear listener, but like the movie opens with a pretty prolonged set piece, you know, with the girl and the Mothman, and we did that on purpose because I knew, you know, we needed to do that for one thing because it's a great setup to the story that's to come, and it kind of sets up the bookends and like the story we're going to tell and the themes we're going to explore, but it also like gets the Mothman in there right away, um
Mm.
because what follows is like it's actually not that long. It's like 8 minutes of local history, town history, which we actually don't do any town history in this one because town history for Point Pleasant is all in the Mothman of Point Pleasant, and this is a sequel to the Mothman of Point Pleasant. So this is all your Appalachian history and West Virginia history, and I thought that was super important too because the movie is really playing with the themes of like our monsters being sort of embedded in our culture,
Mm.
and maybe in the stories that are passed down from generation to generation. So at the beginning, you know, the Appalachian culture is all linked back to the Scotch Irish and the Native American. You know, that was like sort of the Scotch Irish immigrants were the ones that were settling um, Virginia at the time, what became West Virginia, um, and the Native Americans. So I think like we're that's buried all throughout that movie, and for me to remove, you know, more Appalachian history stuff would be to kind of take away the point of the whole movie. So I don't know what
Yeah.
I'm just
I you
rambling at the point.
No, is I actually thought that was I guess if we're still talking about the Mothman legacy, I
Yeah.
thought that was one of the most interesting parts of the documentary. Just because I'm a little weird, I really like the Appalachians. My family's from Kentucky,
Mhm.
so I mean, right up there amongst the foothills, and I'm also a huge fan of country and folk music, so
Mhm.
that has a big part of it stems from the Appalachian Mountains, and so I was actually talking to Pedikov the other day about wanting to hike the Appalachian Trail, which
Mhm.
I think is like a 3-month endeavor, so maybe one day, but
Yeah.
or
Yeah, no, that stuff's super fascinating too, because like the Banshees being, sort of like a stand-in for the Mothman or a predecessor for the Mothman is really interesting, and it's something that came to us while we were making the movie. And like I don't know, you can only do so many documentaries that immediately dive into your local monster story and then just kind of retell people's accounts. I actually have a huge, and this is, I'm gonna jump off the trail again here. I have an issue, like I have issues with sort of right now the hot thing in cryptozoology and like the paranormal in general is this idea of just like retelling or letting people retell their accounts without any without any context or adding anything to that. You know what I mean? Like there's
yes,
shows that there's shows that are literally based around only having people on to tell their like spooky cryptid story.
sure.
And as that becomes more popular, I don't want to be the movie version of that. And
Mm,
so like I want to add more to the conversation than hear so and
yeah,
so's like spooky story. And I also don't want to paint those witnesses in that light anyway, cuz like the, the shows that are doing that are geared around spooky stories and gaining listeners through scary stories, right? So like you're really just sort of putting the witness in a box where they're nothing more than a spooky storyteller. And so I'm not a fan of that either. So I'm just trying to, like, as we go from project to project, I'm trying to add more and more with each story into what we're doing beyond just horror documentaries, which is a lot of people a lot of people think of us as horror documentaries or horror documentarians, and I just want to add more to that, than just that. That was a really good
sure.
sentence.
I think that's what makes you guys different, and I think that's what makes you guys stand out is that you guys aren't just the movie version of what you were just describing of people just sharing their accounts and stories. I mean, when we started Cryptid Campfire, obviously our show's a little bit different. I'm not sure if you've listened to any episodes or not, but we do research on the topic. We've never interviewed any eyewitnesses.
Mm-hmm.
So, because honestly, once you start getting into it, I mean, how different can a Bigfoot sighting be from another Bigfoot sighting? It's like, let me guess, you saw Bigfoot?
Mm-hmm.
uh, I don't know. To me, it's a little boring, but it's more interesting to delve into the history of the topic. I find the stories of the researchers are like completely fascinating to me. Sometimes they're more interesting than the cryptids themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so
Yeah, I
that's where
think I think
stand.
I think anyone connected to these topics is more interesting than like the topic itself, if that makes sense. I
Yeah,
just think um like I think I'm super fascinated in Bigfoot. And when someone, of course, Bigfoot isn't like the greatest example because my approach to Bigfoot is a little different from the other topics we cover. But like if I'm talking to a Bigfoot witness, um, I'm as interested in what happened to you afterward. Like did you have nightmares about it, or do you still think about it to this day? Do you replay it, in your head? How does that, affect your everyday life?
yeah,
Whereas I think most of those shows that are kind of like just retelling spooky stories are there's an agenda there that's pretty much like like let's literally only tell the scariest like Bigfoot stories, the Bigfoot stories where they're like ripping people's heads off and throwing them in cars and stuff. Like that's kind of like that's the hot thing.
Sure.
So you just got to be careful. Like if you're involved in this stuff, that's all going to come and go. Like right now, people like maybe scary Bigfoot stories, but in a year they might not. And if you've pigeonholed yourself as like the spooky, scary Bigfoot story podcast, what's going to happen to you?
Right. So I guess would that be your favorite cryptid, Bigfoot? Or what is your favorite cryptid?
It's weird because I have a really hard time anymore because of the things I've experienced. I have a hard time classifying Bigfoot alongside something like Mothman, because Dogman, or like, to me, I'm at like 80% that Bigfoot is real, and everything else I'm kind of at like 5%, 5% or something. It doesn't mean I don't love the other subjects. It's just realistically, I'm trying to approach Bigfoot in a different light than maybe the other stuff. Like maybe some of the other stuff I'm more interested in the folkloric side of it, than like the real possibly biological existence of like unknown apes in our woods. So it's I think Bigfoot's definitely the one that I come back to the most. I don't know that it's my absolute favorite. Like I go back and forth on this a lot, and I get asked that question a lot, and I can never. I think I usually say Bigfoot, but I really do like a whole host of different topics. I mean, I love like lake monsters. I love the idea of like oceanic monsters, like my friend Shayana, who we had on Monsteropolis. She's like super into the aquatic monsters, and I think that stuff's really interesting, like the giant kraken and all that. Its roots in possible roots in reality. So I've always thought that stuff's really interesting. But the quick answer is probably that yes, probably it's Bigfoot.
For sure. I mean, it can get difficult. I get it. So. Oh, you were talking about In Search Of not too long ago, and there is, I guess, direct inspiration by that series with your series On the Trail Of. Where is that where you got the inspiration from, or is it just coincidence?
No, I mean, so I named it On the Trail Of as a homage to In Search Of, and I don't know if I don't even know if I've talked about the idea or like where the idea for On the Trail Of came from, but like Adrian and my wife and I were staying in a like a cabin near Hocking Hills in Ohio, and it was like her and I and Tommy, and he was only maybe like 4 weeks old. It was right after we had finished filming the Japanese TV show, which was like one of the weirdest experiences of my life. So we were like staying in this cabin in Hocking Hills, and it was like the middle of the night, and I could not sleep because I was laying there. I had ideas coming to me for STM and where I was going to take things. And I think that same weekend was like when I decided on doing Bray Road Beast, and I think we had decided on Flatwoods Monster, and like all these things were kind of running around in my head, and I had been wanting to do something that would be episodic, that we could post free to YouTube and still post to Amazon and hopefully make money on it. And the idea just started out as like, well, let's do an episodic series that's a little more long form than Case Files. And I had hit on that name On the Trail Of at that point. And then I woke up the next morning. I think I texted Alex the next morning to talk to him about On the Trail Of Champ. Because him and I had been talking about doing a Champ movie. And actually at one time, Alex and I had been talking about having him direct the Flatwoods Monster. So so instead of doing Flatwoods, he ended up doing On the Trail of Champ. And what was cool about what was cool about On the Trail of Champ is that the way he made it informed the way I would make all the rest of it, like everything that came after it. So he did On the Trail of Champ, and I don't know exactly what happened. I know he had a crew lined up, and like the day he was supposed to leave, everyone dropped out, and
Yeah.
Alex ended up making On the Trail of Champ pretty much solo, and I was super impressed and also kind of jealous of that because I've had that same sort of experience um, with when we were making Beast of Whitehall because the crew was Brandon and my dad was basically just there to hang out, and Brandon was doing sound. So it was a crew. It was a 3-man crew, but it was a 2-man crew. And so I kind of missed that because like as we've gone on, the crews have gotten more, and I wouldn't say that the crews have gotten bigger, but they've definitely um, it's definitely a more intensive process than it was early on, and I kind of missed that like fun running, like that true like run and gun
The run and gun.
aesthetic, the way the whole process went. So like I decided after that I was going to do On the Trail of Bigfoot, and I was going to do it like entirely on my own in terms of filming. So Alex was the reason for that because he kicked off everything with On the Trail of. And we're trying to better define what separates On the Trail of from our movies now. Um, because On the Trail of was originally supposed to be episodic, and as time has gone on, I've moved in a different direction with On the Trail of Bigfoot. Like the next On the Trail of Bigfoot is going to be a movie. Um, and I know, we have On the Trail of Lake Michigan Mothman coming at some point. And beyond that, I haven't like talked about it anywhere, but we're in the works to do On the Trail of Hauntings um, with
Whoa.
with one of the STM crew taking over the directing reins on that. So I think what On the Trail of is going to become is much more about the actual STM crew being on camera doing this stuff, pretty much like what you saw in On the Trail of UFOs, where Shannon is very much at the forefront of it, and the crew is in it. And you'll see more of that with On the Trail of Bigfoot: The Journey. But I think going forward, that's just like what's going to separate On the Trail of from the movies. Is the movies are not at all about the STM crew; they're about the story, and we let the people involved in those stories, sort of be the leads, and then On the Trail of will rely more on us, sort of, moving the narrative along. So, yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. That's actually something I wanted to talk to you about. To rewind just a little bit, is how did you and Pedicab cross paths?
I found so Alex had made that he had made like an 8-minute. I might be wrong about that runtime, but I think it was like an 8-minute long Loch Ness documentary that I found because of an article on cryptozoologynews.com maybe, or like one of those. I can't remember the exact URL, but the guy had posted it. I watched it and I enjoyed it, and I contacted Alex because I was getting the schedule worked out for our second Minerva Monster Day, and I wanted to show the movie there. So I ended up talking with Alex, and then he ended up coming to Ohio, and I think we hung out at the Mothman Festival too. So like in this short span of time, we got pretty close just through talking on the phone, and so that was how it all came together. Was I saw his, his movie, and Alex is unique in the crypto world in that we continue to work together from project to project. Other than like Lyle, or I guess Shannon, who I've known since 2015. Like, other than Lyle or Shannon, I don't really go. I don't really get to have the opportunity to continue working with people on multiple projects. It's like, not in this capacity where they're helping in the production end of things. So Alex has been different in that we keep going back to each other like lovers who have who have broken up. Uh, no, I mean, like we just keep we keep going back to I keep going back to him, and like I actually tried to get him to come down to work on the Mark of the Bell Witch shoot last week. Like
Mm.
he's the best thing about that dude is I'm very high strung, as like anyone who works on an STM shoot will tell you. On a shoot, I have everything in my head that I need to get done, and I'm 100% focused on that. So that means I can get really cranky really fast.
Mm.
And so the people you see that work on STM shoots are predominantly people who've known me for a very long time. So they're people who can deal with my grumpiness, um, or they're just in such a great spirit all the time that it doesn't bug them. And I think Alex falls in because I haven't known
Yeah.
Alex that long, but he's got like such a good attitude about everything. There's that he puts up, he tolerates my grouchiness. I've also been
Yeah.
working on the grouchiness, so I think over the last, like Zach was telling me last week, like since Boggy Creek, I've mellowed out a lot on shoots. So I'm usually
Mm.
pretty. I wouldn't say I'm chill, um, but I'm less cranky than I was like when we were
Less.
filming Boggy Creek.
Oh, yeah. I as a fellow filmmaker, I guess I'm kind of springing this on you, but I've been making movies since I was 11 or 12, and that's something I struggle with myself, is being pretty grouchy on set, you know. And as I've gotten older, I've definitely chilled out a lot. But like you said, I don't think I would say I'm chill on set, but I'm
No, I mean like
less.
there's always like I don't know what kind of movies you make or what kind of work you do, but like if you're a filmmaker of any kind and you're working in like the run and gun doc format or fiction, I mean, it doesn't matter, narrative or documentary, whatever. Um, I think just the nature of what we do is going to immediately cause that in a certain personality type.
Mm,
Because you got to be really like you have to be hands on with everything, or you get into the edit and you realize you missed every single aspect of what you needed you needed to do. And we've
right.
had projects like that where I was not like focused enough on what we were doing. I think Mothman Legacy was like that because we ended up having to do 3 shoots for Mothman Legacy. And part of that was that I was dealing with so many different things at once, not just like how to make a movie during the coronavirus, but like I had to shoot all the recreations by myself. And so
Yeah.
you're dealing with so much stuff, and then there's factors you can't control. Like there were only supposed to be 2 shoots for Mothman Legacy, and the second one was supposed to be in very early May. We went back to Point Pleasant right after the lockdown had ended. We went back to Point Pleasant. We shot um, like 5 more interviews, 6 more interviews, and we got our B-roll. Well, the problem was we only had 3 days. Might not have even been 3 days. We only had like 2 days, and the first day got rained out, so we only
Oh,
ended up with like 150 B-roll shots on that first day, and and the second day we were mostly doing interviews. So I knew we were going to end up having to come back, so we ended up having to do more shoots. And like, but it's good to be on top of all that. Like, it's really good to be on top of all that. But yeah, the crankiness thing, like you learn early on, you'll drive away more people than you manage to keep around if you're just a grump all the time.
yeah. No, it's true. I'm very fortunate. I found a couple of friends who are able to keep me in check, if you will. Yo, Eli, calm down. What are you doing? You know. Um, but I did want to ask you, what movie got you into movies? What was if you can think of a
Yeah,
film that you
no.
watched? Yeah.
So I have 2 answers to this because, and this is a great question because no one ever asked me this stuff. So there's 2 answers. One is, so my mom as a kid showed me I think it was Jason and the Argonauts, the Ray Harryhausen movie. It's either Jason and the Argonauts or Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, because I know I watched those pretty close together. But I'm pretty sure it was Jason and the Argonauts. Um, Dude, I probably have a dozen answers to this actually now that I'm saying this, but Jason and the Argonauts is the one where I can remember being aware of the actual process of filmmaking. Like there was a process that went into making that movie, because when you're a kid, you don't think about that. It's like movies are this magical medium where you just suddenly there's these moving images in front of your eyes and you might love it, but you don't think of it as a job or as someone created this. It's just this thing that you love. And that's the movie where I remember watching the skeleton fight, and I realized, because you could tell, that you could tell the jerkiness of the stop motion and everything, and so you could tell someone had put time and effort into creating that. And so I remember going. My mom took me to the library, and I got a book about Ray Harryhausen, and I read that, and that was where I also sort of refound King Kong, which kind of goes back to what I said about multiple answers for this, because I remember watching King Kong as a kid at a. This is super vivid. Every time we pass this place, I think of this. I watched King Kong as a kid in an auto dealership while my dad was filling out the loan papers for a car. And so I remember that, and that was probably the first time where I became sort of enamored with film. I just don't think I was aware of it yet. But then the other answer is that when I was older, like 18 or 19, 1998, Rushmore came out. The Wes Anderson movie. And I'm not like the biggest Wes Anderson movie. I'm not the biggest Wes Anderson fan anymore, but Rushmore was like my REM moment. When I was a kid, my entire like knowledge of music was based around what my sisters listened to on Top 40 radio. And then once I was in the car and there was an REM song on, and it might have been like "End of the World as We Know It" or something, like one of their famous songs. And I remember hearing it and thinking that's a great song. And then I was in a store, like a Walmart, and I saw an REM CD and I bought it. And it was their newest CD, which apparently was hated. I can't remember which album it is, but it's got some really great songs on it. I used to fall asleep listening to that. Anyway, that REM led to like Radiohead and Smashing Pumpkins and all the stuff and I formed like my own interests in music. Rushmore was that, but with film. I had only been sort of aware of what I was raised on, or like what my sisters watched. So I went to see Rushmore by myself because when I was a kid, I weighed like 300 pounds, and I just spent all my time sitting in the movie theater alone watching movies. Literally, like I would go to the movie theater and I'd be there for like 6, 7 hours at a time, 8 hours. I'd spend my whole day there, just movie to movie. I'd hop movie to movie. And Rushmore, I watched 3 times in a day. And I just remember that I immediately got it. Like I clicked with the main character. Like I could see myself in that role. And so from then on, that was like I started basing my interest in movies then around like the quality of the work more so than just, maybe things that viscerally appealed to me, which there's something to be said for that too. But Rushmore's the one where I can remember seeing it and I saw myself in the character. And then I also was connecting with it artistically or creatively.
Yeah, heck yeah. King Kong, you said. This is the original King Kong?
Yeah.
Yeah. That movie's pretty savage. Um, just some of the shots where King Kong's like stepping on the natives and stuff, like
Yeah.
just this giant foot just stepping on someone. It's pretty savage.
Yeah.
But what do you think about the 2005 version of King Kong?
I
Direct.
love that movie. Yeah. I saw that movie, like I saw that a bunch in theaters too. See, like when I like a movie, I see it I mean, not so much anymore because I have a kid and I get to go to the movie theater like maybe 4 or 5 times a year, and we just lost our local theater here in Wadsworth, so it'll probably be less now. Um, but yeah, the 2005 one, I loved that it was a love story. So like, I mean, heck yeah, it was too long. Like to me, like there's no denying that the first 45 minutes are unwieldy to a ridiculous degree, but at the same time I'm like, well, fine. Like I don't care any that's it's great that a studio just let him do that. I wish they would have reined him in on The Hobbit, but like heck, go crazy with a King Kong movie. That movie's gorgeous too. Like
Oh yeah.
just visually that movie's absolutely breathtaking. Some of the effects haven't aged great, but I really like that movie a lot, and the
Yeah.
score was really good. And the scene in the end with not at the end, but towards the end with the Kong and where they're on the ice
In
pond
Central. Yeah, in
in
Central
Central
Park.
Park. Yeah,
Such a good
it's like
scene.
yeah, it's weird because like in that one, his death hits you on a different level from any of the others, like any other adaptation
Yeah.
of Kong.
I want to say he's less of a monster in that one.
Mm.
He has a bit of more of a personality, I guess you will. You have a reason to care for him more so like than in the 1933 version. He's just like this evil beast who's kidnapped a woman and is murdered, and he starts bouncing off the Empire State Building. Uh,
He's got the great. He's got so much heart in his eyes, though. In in the Willis O'Brien one, like there's so much. They had to do so much work on those stop motion movies
oh
that
yeah,
it's kind of like how I feel about filmmakers who make the big blockbusters now. To be able to get any heart or life into those movies is a miracle. So to like imbue what amounts to like an articulated metal skeleton covered in clay to be to be able to put a human being or not or humanity or whatever you want to call it into that is pretty incredible. And like that's how I feel about people who make blockbusters and manage to imbue them with some sort of creativity because I don't see a lot of that going on
mm,
anymore either. Is like I think Marvel screwed all that up. Like all the Marvel movies look the same, and they all
mm,
aside from like the James Gunn, like I think Guardians of the Galaxy is really great.
yeah,
Um, and I like the first Avengers movie too,
oh
and I
yeah,
like heck I like the second Avengers movie. Like I think
yeah,
what happened is at some point after Winter Soldier, because I like that one as well, they all became carbon copies of each other.
mm.
And it was funny to me. This is a weird rabbit trail. You probably going to end up cutting half my interview. But what was funny to me, it was like people were just ragging on like Batman versus Superman or Man of Steel.
yeah,
Um, and to me those movies were so much more appealing to me than say like Captain America Winter Civil War. That was the one I really absolutely hated. Or I mean like they all just feel and look the exact same. And and to me like you watch what Zack Snyder was doing with Man of Steel, and yeah, there are parts that are insanely stupid, but also like they're superhero movies and they have a unique style and they at least have his vision behind it. And I can tell who directed it when I'm watching it. You know,
sure,
like
oh yeah,
I cannot people love the Black Panther movie, and the dude that directed that made one of my favorite movies of all time, Creed, and you
yeah,
can't tell it's the same director. And it drives
sure.
me crazy that it's like that. That's kind of like what's become the norm in Hollywood now is, and I just don't know how we've gone from like blockbusters like Jaws and Raiders of the Lost Ark, or
Some
even
of the
like
best.
yeah, or even like Transformers, which I'm a huge Michael Bay fan, as weird as that sounds.
I like
But
Michael
like,
Bay. I like those movies.
yeah,
Uh,
like I don't know how we've gone from that to Captain America: Civil War. You know, or uh, you know, like a good example is the Godzilla movies. Like those so far, the style and tone of those changes based on the director, and I
mhm.
appreciate that. Like I like the fact that the first Godzilla movie, um, feels very uh claustrophobic and small scale, like where you're kind of seeing everything from the human perspective, and then it switches to Skull Island, which is actually not a movie I love. I actually don't even know that I like it, but I really like the fact that it has its own style. Like it's a crazy movie. It's insane. Um,
I, it's funny with Kong Skull Island. Yeah, I love King Kong. That
uh,
2005 version of King Kong is what got me into movies, and
mhm.
I was like totally stoked. There's this new King Kong movie coming out, and I worked at a movie theater here in Los Angeles. Um, that had the biggest IMAX screen in Southern California. So of course I watched it, and I was like, I don't know about that. And it's funny because I haven't seen it since the theater, and I just watched it like a couple weeks ago, and I was like, I still don't know about that one. Uh,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it doesn't. There's no. This is what it is. There's no likable human character in the entire movie,
Yeah.
which kind of leaves you rooting solely for Kong, which is would it's fine, but they don't really. Here, it's like if that movie had been directed by Peter Jackson and still maintained the same runtime and everything,
Yeah.
you would have it would have been great because Peter knew how to make Kong lovable in the small moments, and this movie didn't bother to do that, but you're still left with Kong as the only relatable protagonist.
Right.
Um, so it's a weird, but at the same time, that guy, the Vought Roberts, like
Yeah.
it's
Kings of
Jordan.
Summer, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Jordan
Fantastic
and Vought
movie.
Roberts.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that dude. At least Skull Island has his stamp all over it.
Yeah.
Like, and I know from like talking to Adam that like he was fighting execs every step of the way behind the scenes to like get his vision for that movie on screen. So props to him just for getting it made and doing it the way he wanted.
Yeah. Yeah. Heck yeah. How did that come about? Do you know Adam Wingard? Like, I know you know him, but
Mhm.
did how do you know him?
He contacted me on Instagram in 2017, in winter of 2017, right after he saw Invasion on Chestnut Ridge. So he like
Really?
watched, yeah, he watched Invasion on Chestnut Ridge and really liked it. And he contacted me and we started talking through Instagram. And then one day he like got my phone number and gave me a call, and we were talking about doing something together. And we didn't know what that would be. So in 2018, he flew me out to LA to stay with him and his girlfriend Joy for a few days. So I stayed at his house for like 3 days. And that was what's funny is like that was they were really ramping up pre-production on Kong versus Godzilla. So when I flew in, I got off the plane and I had a text from him and he was like, "Hey, my driver's gonna get you or whatever at the airport." First of all, I'm from friggin' Ohio. I don't drivers at the airport in LA and all that. I used to go to LA constantly, so I was psyched to be back out there because I hadn't been there in like 12 years.
Oh,
I also wasn't prepared for how much it had changed. But
yeah.
but uh it was just a weird situation. So I get picked up at the airport by this guy, and as soon as I get in the car, he's like, we're going over to Warner Brothers to the pre-production offices. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's totally normal to go do. Let's go to the pre-production offices for Kong vs. Godzilla. And so like I'm texting Adrian and like my mom and dad. I'm like, I'm on my way to Warner Brothers.
That's so
Totally,
sick.
yeah, totally geeking out over it. So we get yeah, so I got to spend like 3 days out there, and we hung out at the pre-production offices a lot. I have a lot of photos on my phone that no one knows I have of like the artwork from the movie and everything.
Oh, I
I know
bet.
the entire movie, like all 3 acts. I know every single story
Really?
beat. Yeah, because they walked me through the room. I don't know what they call that room, but the room where they hang all the art that takes you through scene by scene.
Yeah.
And so I got to go through all that stuff. And then when I was out there last year, I went up to his offices. He had moved over to Legacies, or Legendary offices. So I
I'm
got to go up to
geeking.
his. Yeah, I got to go up to his offices at Legendary and watch 12 minutes of the. It's the scene that's out the battleship fight where they fight on
Oh,
top of the
sick.
battleship. So I got to watch that whole scene. Um, but yeah, I mean, like we signed an agreement last December, a collaboration agreement, and we're supposed to be working on something together. But I haven't actually spoken to him since we signed the agreement, so I don't know if anything's ever going to come of it. Probably not. Like the thing that
Mhm.
I'm used to at this point is in 5 years of doing this, you are almost daily offered some sort of what seems like it's going to change your life opportunity that never happens. And
Mm.
and and when they do seem like they're going to happen, half the time you realize it's not what you want anyway. So we turned down a TV show last year that was like on the verge of happening, um, because we realized like it's not really what I want to do. Like I don't
Mm.
want to be told what I need to be doing with a show by execs, even if it's something that's going to make us a bunch of money or famous or whatever. Like if I wanted to go be miserable at a job, I'd go back to medical billing where at least I can see my kid at night. You know, like
Yeah.
I don't really need to go make a TV show where I'm going to be gone for most of the year and not get to be around my family. So that's you learn like it's constant highs and lows if you let this stuff affect you. I mean, if I told you what is supposedly in the works right now with us, we were offered something in the last like 3 weeks that's we had this meeting that was so surreal to be a part of that my wife and I were just sitting there looking at each other through the entire meeting. We had to put the guy on mute every couple seconds to laugh because it's like what you're being offered is so surreal, but it's more than likely never going to happen. So you focus on the work you can do, and everything else is like a maybe, but probably not. Like
Yeah.
so,
I
you're
mean,
never. I don't think we're never gonna get rich making like cryptid docs. But I also realized,
you mean you're not rolling in millions of dollars?
no, we're still working on that. No, um, I realized during that trip out to LA when I stayed with Adam and Joy that I have no interest in doing what he's doing either. Like I don't. I have a manager who's constantly trying to like push me to start letting her look for like narrative directing jobs for me, and
Mm.
it's just not like it's not something I find appealing. I'm up for directing a narrative, but I want it to be a narrative that I've written or have some creative involvement in
Sure.
beyond just like gun for hire directing a movie. And I definitely don't want to direct a big budget movie. I just have no as a kid that was like as a teenager that was my dream was like Steven Spielberg kind of stuff. And now that I've seen what that's like behind the scenes, it looks horrible. I can't imagine like a more creatively stifling way to make a movie.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, I can relate to a lot of what you just said, but I won't get into that. Um, I was gonna ask. Let's see.
What kind of movies do you make?
I do narrative fiction. I wanted to do for a long time in high school big budget movies. So that's kind of what I did was my attempt at big budget movies, but with my high school friends. So they have a lot of special effects, which I did all myself through After Effects,
Hmm.
which was actually served me better than film school ever did.
Yeah, I believe it.
So yeah, I mean, I just graduated from film school in December,
Hmm.
and I just feel like I wasted 3.5 years of my life because I didn't come out of it learning anything about
Hmm.
films. And they also, yeah, it's funny because in film school they don't let you make films.
Hmm.
Um, that's like not what you do in film school. So I'm not entirely sure what you do in film school.
No, they try to get you on the weird like conveyor belt of whatever. There's a way they want to make and distribute movies, and that's it. Like that's all they want. It's like the film. It's like the film festival thing. We don't do film fests anymore. I don't
Mm,
submit to film fests. I think it's a con job. Like you pay a ton of money to send a movie to a festival that more than likely rejects it half the time when you're making documentaries about Bigfoot anyway.
sure.
So, do you have like a sizzle reel or anything? A reel that you've cut for yourself, or?
I don't have a scissor reel per se.
Hmm.
I could probably whip one together if you want to see some of my work.
Yeah, I
Uh,
do.
okay, then I'll get on that. But I did want to, if I may, I would like to tell you that you're a huge inspiration to myself. I am from Southern California, but I didn't grow up in Los Angeles. I grew up in a small town called Temecula, California.
Hmm.
Um, have you heard of it?
Yeah, I can't figure out why I've heard of it.
We're famous for our wine, Temecula wineries. It's where it's
Let me
popping.
look at this. I think is this outside of LA?
It is outside of
Or,
LA and kind of in between LA and San Diego.
trying to figure out if I've been through there, and I think I have. Dude, yeah, I've been through Temecula because so I used to go out there all the time. I stayed in Huntington Beach a lot and like Playa Vista and like what's Marina Del Rey area, and then
Yeah.
we'd drive down the coast. So yeah, Temecula I've definitely been through there. I don't think I've ever been there, but I've definitely been through
Yeah.
there.
It's grown a lot in the past couple of years. I mean, even from when I left home. So I left home, went to Los Angeles to film school, lived in
Mhm.
LA, worked several jobs. I mean, low budget horror films. I did a couple of those. And I don't like doing that. I really, something about LA culture I really don't like. And I think this whole coronavirus situation has really allowed me to peer into myself and just realize LA is not the place for me.
Yeah.
And because you are a filmmaker and because you are pretty successful, I'm gonna say it is, and you live in Ohio, like I'm like,
Mhm.
why am I in LA? Yeah, I don't have to be, especially in this day and age. So
I've
uh,
been saying for a long time, like, I don't think there's this idea that you need to be in LA to like make movies, and I don't think that's the case. I also think that Hollywood's going to crash and burn here pretty soon, at least partially because of like
yeah.
the coronavirus thing. I think the best thing you can do is just make your own stuff, and that's the absolute best way to learn. And I also think you build your own portfolio of work when you do that, or like you work on stuff like what I'm doing, and you build a track record for like Zach could probably get work offers based on the work he's done for STM. And I know like other people that have worked on STM projects who do get work offers. Santino, who does our special effects and all that stuff, he gets offers because of um, STM projects. But yeah,
Yeah,
dude,
heck yeah.
like LA, I don't live there, and I would never bash it because I can tell you right now the like best burritos on earth are in LA. And like some of my favorite food, like whenever we go out there, it's like just an eating trip around the city because I got to go to like all the places I go to mess hall when I'm out there and all that stuff. I was just there in November. We should have like tried to
Yeah,
meet up
I
or
was.
something.
Oh, well, see, I thought about that. I thought about messaging you, but full honesty here, I was intimidated by you. For
Hmm.
the same reason I was intimidated by Pedikov. You guys don't smile in your photos,
Hmm.
so.
No, it's true. I'm very grouchy too. So Pedikov's different though. Pedikov looks like a grump, and then you realize like he's a teddy bear.
He
Whereas
is,
you
yeah.
meet me and you just realize I'm just a grump in real life too. So no, but like yeah, what you were saying, like the idea that you have to be located in LA or that you have to go to film school. Zach went to film school.
Mhm.
Like, you know, I keep referencing. So Zach's my director of photography. He's like one of my oldest friends. He went to Full Sail and did the film thing. Moved out to LA, worked there for a little while, and then came back to Ohio. Like I direct movies. I never went to film school. I didn't. We don't follow the standard way of doing things. Like it drives the people we work with nuts because they don't like the people that are actually in Hollywood.
Mhm.
They can't comprehend how we do the things we do. So like the perfect example is we just finished Mothman Legacy and we signed a distribution agreement with 1091. I started getting messages from them 2 weeks ago when we were filming right before we were going to go film uh, Bell Witch, and it was like our point of contact there, and he's like, "Dude, I watched the movie last night. It's crazy. It's like the best paranormal documentary I've ever seen. All this stuff." And then he's like, "We got to have a meeting just to discuss marketing." So we get on the phone the next day, and at some point in the conversation, I mentioned that the movie was made for like $15,000, and he thought I meant like the sound design budget or like maybe the compositing budget or something. And I was like, no, like the entire
Crazy.
movie is $15,000. And so like he still can't wrap his brain around that. But you know how
Mhm.
you do that? Like I'm based in Ohio. Like to grab three of my friends and go down to West Virginia, it was like $1,000 a trip, so you go do a couple trips down there and you shoot and you come home, and I shot all the recreations myself, and then you hand them over to Santino to do the special effects, and he can do that stuff himself because he taught himself, and he's also based in Ohio, and he doesn't
Oh.
expect $65,000 a day or whatever a
Mm.
normal effects budget would be for something like that. So like you can't.
Yeah.
My intro to the book, to the Making Monsters book that's coming out, like it kind of hits on this. I talk to filmmakers, young filmmakers all the time who are like, "How do I do what you do?" First of
Mhm.
all, um, I did this for 2 years basically for free. So be prepared to like not make a dime, to feel miserable all the time. Be prepared for the. I mean, still holds true today. Be prepared to not be taken seriously by anyone at all. Like no
Mhm.
one takes me, no one that actually makes movies takes me, Seth Breedlove, seriously. Um, they don't think what we do is actual filmmaking. What we do is, making movies about silly topics somehow. What they perceive as a silly topic somehow, makes it a lesser project than something like what Michael Moore is doing.
Sure.
Um, so like,
Sure.
um, so what was I talking about? I have no idea. Oh, so like you can't
Just
most. I mean, 80% of what we've done has been luck. Like it's luck in that we happen to release something at the right time, or happen to bump into someone at the right time, like Santino, who was like just coming out of college and had the means to do special effects. It's like a lot of what we've done is luck, or it's the people who are involved being 100% willing to invest a lot of their time and energy into building this, you know? Um,
yeah.
it would be impossible. I think it's impossible for someone to repeat what we've done. You might be able to do your own version, or not your own version. You might be able to do your own thing that people then compare to STM, but I don't think someone could set out to like create their own version of Small Town Monsters and actually do it. Because I know people who've tried. I was told 3 years ago by someone who today is still not managed to do it that he was going to create his own version of Small Town Monsters. I'm in a weird like feud with some guy right now who is trying to get contact info for our effects artists and stuff from me so he could do the same sort of thing we're doing. And like I
Uh,
tell everyone when they tell me that kind of thing, like don't do what we're doing. Like you have to
so,
do your own thing. Like you have to
yeah.
be creative. And if you're just sort of like trying to figure out what made us quote unquote successful and repeat that, I don't think it'll be possible. My wife
No.
gets a huge kick out of people saying we're like a success, or people, not that we aren't successful, because I think like you said that, like I think we are successful in that we managed to make movies independently and do it year in and year out for 5 years now. But as far as like the people that think we're rich, I mean, I drive a
Mhm.
Hyundai Elantra with a busted headlight. Like we're not rich. Like, I drive a 2013 Hyundai.
I mean,
You know,
I
I bought my first new car ever last year because my old Honda CRV kept breaking down on the side of the road. So,
mm,
you know, I mean,
yeah,
it's not like a glamorous thing making independent movies, but if you love it, it's like totally worth it.
yeah. And you sound like a man who loves it. So
Yeah.
I yeah, I made that joke earlier about you're not rolling in millions of dollars. I think I've been I've had people say that about you. I've heard people say that about you, that you have millions of dollars, and I'm like,
Oh, I've never heard that.
maybe. You've never heard that?
I haven't heard the millions of dollars. I saw a guy so recently, the most recent one that we've seen, and Adrian and I are to the point where people say this, we just show it to each other and laugh. Some guy said Seth Breedlove is minted. He shouldn't even be doing Kickstarters at this point. And I was like, minted. Like,
That's sick.
it's such a joke. But it also is just because people don't understand how any of this works. You know,
Oh
like
yeah.
people don't understand how independent film works. Like
Mm,
anyone can make and distribute movies now. So the fact that I make and distribute movies doesn't mean anything. Anyone could send press releases to media that gets your name out there, you
mm,
know, and you'll probably have decent success at least early on with getting your name out there that way. And any like there, so much of what people think of when they think of success when it relates back to film is not success at all. It's just how you do, it's how you it's how you maintain a business when you're running a film company, a film production company. You
mm,
have to get your name out there. You have to like be promoting your work, and making the movies themselves is like, you know, it's grueling. Like, I mean, when we were doing On the Trail of UFOs, I was working, no joke, like 14, 16-hour days, um, for weeks leading up to the finale when we finally closed it down. And then coronavirus hit right after. So, I mean, like, it's not, but I'm not complaining either. Like man, I mean, every shoot I have like a moment where I look around and realize that what I'm doing is like the greatest job in the world. On Bell Witch, we were back in the woods, shooting some scene where we were back there with these historians. We were looking for John Bell's grave. And I was with all my, you know, my friends were there, and we were with these historians, and I was learning about life in the 1800s, and I was like, man, this is like the absolute pinnacle. Like you can't, in terms of enjoying your job, like you're not gonna do better than that. Like
mm,
to get the travel and be around people you love and meet interesting new people who you end up really getting attached to. Like that's as a kid and even as an adult, like that was all I ever wanted, was to do a job that I didn't detest.
yeah.
So the idea that we're millionaires, though, we've walked away. I would assume at this point we've probably walked away from $1 million pretty easily, because we've
Hmm.
turned down, you know, there's been TV offers, but we just don't. There's things you have to give up. I'm too old. The other thing is I'm too old to do that. I think if I was younger,
Yeah.
then those things wouldn't matter, as you know, like losing a little bit of time with your wife or whatever
Sure.
wouldn't matter. But I'm almost 40. I'm 38 years old, so like I don't really want to be away from my family too much. Like I'm already gone, you know, probably 5, 6 weeks in a year, maybe a little
Yeah.
more in weeks in years when events are actually happening. All of our events are canceled this year, but like
Mm,
last year I was probably gone, I think we figured 60 some days is what, I mean, that's a lot of time to be away from your 3-year-old, 2-year-old last year.
Yeah.
And you miss out on some of that stuff. So the last thing I want is to be gone an additional 3 months or whatever, 4 months filming some TV show that ends up on Travel Channel that 100,000 people see. And what's funny to me
Yeah.
about that kind of thing is success in the paranormal and cryptid world is kind of based on that. It's kind of based on what TV shows you've been on. Like the getting on the like speaking circuit for conferences and stuff. And so
Yeah.
if you haven't had like a show on the Travel Channel, then a lot of people don't think you're anybody, which is fine. Like I don't really have a desire to be an anybody in that world, but it's just funny that that's like kind of what they base that's their gauge for success, is like what crappy show you've been on that gets canceled after one season or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. I didn't even think about that. Um, yeah, I mean, doing the podcast, just kind of interviews like this, I've come to know a lot of people in the cryptid community, so I've always considered myself part of it. But
Yeah.
now that you say it, I don't think I would ever be asked to speak at a festival or a conference or anything, because I haven't been on a Travel Channel show.
Yeah, I mean, I I don't I don't get asked, really. Bigfoot conferences especially sort of overlook STM. Um, but I don't get asked to speak anymore. Some of that is because I turn them down. I don't like talking. I don't really think I think the reason is what I like is what we're doing right now, which is
Mm,
basically talking about film and life. I don't really care to just sort of stand there and tell spooky stories. And
mm,
that's typically, what people want to hear is like spooky stories. And that just doesn't appeal to me anymore. Early on when we were getting into this, I did a lot of like podcasts and stuff where I was just talking about, the Minerva monster case or whatever, and you would go through it bit by bit. And these
sure.
days I have a very difficult time doing that. My brain doesn't allow me to sort through that information like it did back then. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that now we're at 11 movies. I start trying to put dates together and I can't. Like right now I'm working on a story that starts in 1817 and ends in 1821. And that's going to get mixed up with like 1978 when Minerva was, or 1976 when Whitehall was, 1952 for the Flatwoods Monster. The names start getting jostled together, and I
Mm,
find, like I'll be talking about Minerva and accidentally say that like Paul Gosselin saw it or something. Like it's just the amount of information gets all jostled up in my head, I guess.
for sure. No, I mean, with these episodes, I mean, we go in, we research real deep, and then once we're done talking about it, whoosh, we throw that information out of our heads. I mean,
Yeah.
there's there's a lot to remember,
Yeah.
and I don't think it's possible for one person to just memorize all of it. I don't, unless you really like dedicated your entire life to it, which I don't want to do, but uh what are some of your dream projects to do? Like cryptids or topics to cover on a small town monsters production?
Um, we just, I mean, I think we just did one with On the Trail of Bigfoot the Journey because I really wanted to go back to the Adirondacks. So to get to go back and then just like be there for an adventure was was like a dream project. Momo was a dream project. For ones that I want to do, like we have a script for the Ape Canyon movie. Um,
Ooh.
and so that's a narrative film, and it's written by Jason Udis and Mark Matsky. Um, so I want to do that. Um, my dream project. So I have four besides the Ape Canyon thing. None of them are cryptid related. 1999, which I've talked about before, which I got to stop talking about because someone's going to end up just taking it. But it's 99 was like the year I graduated high school. I was homeschooled, but it was the year I graduated. Um, and I grew up in a small town, so I had a lot of friends, even though I was homeschooled. And Like it was a year where we just spent a lot of time like egging cars and getting in fights outside of bookstores and hitting on girls. And like it was also the year that Star Wars Phantom Menace came out, and I waited in line for 3 days for tickets and camped out overnight for tickets. And so like I want to make
Crazy.
all that into a movie. And it's basically like My American Graffiti or Dazed and Confused. So that's like my dream movie. And then there's this. I had three ideas for three different movies that would be based in part on like my grandparents. Um, I don't have names for them or even plot lines exactly, but I call them the nostalgia trilogy. Uh, and like those have been kicking around in my head for a long time. But like as
Nice.
far as cryptids or docs, I mean, part of the fun of this is that anymore we've done so many subjects that we're to the point where I'm learning about the stories as we're telling them. So Bell Witch, I didn't know anything about Bell Witch a year ago, and now I'm learning about it as I'm telling it. And
Sure.
I love it. Like you become attached to the people in these stories. This one's been very I think I just talked about this on Monstropolis, but like this one's been very different from other projects in that so much of it is historical. So my eyes are being open to a lot of historical stuff. And we did an interview with a African American historian 2 weeks ago, and he just kind of like was telling us about slave life. And and his great grandpa had been a slave, and like he has all this historical documentation about it and stuff. And just like interviewing him was super interesting because he like it was really emotional for me. I don't think it was emotional for him because I mean he's probably told this stuff 100 times, but he got like he
Sure.
had pictures, he had all these photos and documentation, and he was talking about like children being separated from their parents. And it was things that I'm aware of, and I grew up aware of because I grew up in a family that's sort of entrenched in history. But I hearing it from him was different. I don't know. It was just a really cool experience, and just learning about what life at that point in time in America was like is really interesting.
Yeah.
So early in the founding of our country. Like you don't think about the 1800s as being early in America, but I mean it is. Like it
It
was.
is.
Tennessee was like the West. Like that was their version of the Wild West in
Yeah, it
1817
was.
was Tennessee. And so like it's crazy to really delve into that point in American history. And so yeah, I- every project those all the STM projects are I call certain ones like my baby, like Beast of Whitehall is my baby, MoMA's one of my babies. But you really learn to love each one. There isn't a single one that I look at and think I couldn't get into that. I've pretty much gotten into every single story we've told. I find some way of emotionally investing myself in it. I think if I wasn't emotionally invested, that would be where I'd run into trouble. Um, I want to have like an emotional connection to it, to to something. Like with Mothman Legacy, it was the Appalachian culture side of it. And with the Mothman of Point Pleasant, it was the Silver Bridge collapse and Caroline Harris and her son having died on the bridge. And I was keenly aware of that like the entire time we were making the movie. With Boggy Creek, even though it's one of my least favorite, if not my least favorite SDM movie,
Mm.
um, it was probably like the Crabtree family, or that idea of disappearing history that kind of like really comes into the forefront at the very end of the movie. Um, Terror in the Sky is the entire movie I got invested in. Like I had a hard time not finding something to kind of like put some of myself into it. Um,
Mhm.
I remember because that's the one STM movie, maybe next to like Beast of Boy Hall, where I can point to it and say that is not the least bit like quote unquote horror. Um, it's just not a horror documentary at all. I remember telling Brandon like when he was doing the music, it needs more melancholy. Just just keep putting more melancholy in there. Um, and so like if I can find anything emotional, any sort of emotional hook to get invested in, we're good. Like we haven't announced it yet, but I think the next STM movie is going to be a Rougarou movie that'll come out sometime next year, and we're kind of in the process of getting all the the um the research compiled for it. Heather,
Yeah.
who helps with all my research stuff, she's amazing at that stuff, and so she's helping me get through all of that right now. And what I'm finding there is that I've always wanted to go to. I have a vision in my head for what the Louisiana swamps look like, and that's what I want to see on screen. And a lot of that goes back to being a kid and thinking of Louisiana as a kid and the swamps as a kid. So like maybe my hook there will be something, relating back to mythical places versus real ones. I don't know.
Sure. Uh, I'm actually gonna go look for the Rougarou here shortly.
Cool.
Um, hanging out with or I'm part of the Chasing Legends crew now with Pedikov and Nash Hoover.
Cool.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I've never been to New Orleans, so I'm like totally stoked. So
Yeah.
it's funny,
Yeah.
funny that you say the Rougarou. Um,
Yeah, we haven't announced that. It's kind of still up in the air. We have two other possible projects, but once we're out of that one, that'll be the last of the Southern Monsters trilogy. And then I think from then on out, we're going to stop doing the regional trilogies. We're just going to kind of make the movies I want to make at that point. Because the problem with doing the regional thing is you're locked into one part of the country. And there's still like a lot out there that we need to get to. But I mean, I want to be able to work on something like this is an example that's never going to happen, but like a Skinwalker Ranch movie, where you would do a Skinwalker Ranch movie and then you could turn around and do a movie about the Dover Demon. Like so I'm
mm,
not because right now we're tied into this regional idea
mm,
and we have been now pretty much since the beginning, or at least since the Appalachian Monsters. Um, and it just like I find it kind of constricting because you want to. There's stuff that I get interested in very quickly, and then you can't go do it because it's not in the right part of the country.
yeah, wild. That's crazy. I didn't even think about that. Hmm. Top five favorite monsters. They can be monsters from movies, literature, uh, cryptids. Don't matter. Just the first
Um,
five that come to your head. No particular
yeah,
order.
Flatwoods Monster is definitely a top, a top monster.
Mm.
Um, Momo's in there, like Momo, Minerva. I separate them out because I don't necessarily consider them typical Bigfoot cases.
Mm.
Um, can I say the Headless Horseman? Does he count?
Yeah, there you go. That one counts.
Okay. You know what? The Bell Witch, I'm kind of like gaining an affinity for her. Um, she's
Yeah.
got like such a personality. I think I gotta go Mothman though. So I'd
Ooh.
probably say those. Like it's gonna be Flatwoods and Minerva and Momo, Mothman, and Sleepy Hollow. Yeah, Headless Horseman.
Yeah. Tight. Those are some good ones.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Oh, one last question before we wrap this thing up.
Yeah.
Blu-rays. Are
hmm
there gonna be some Blu-rays coming out, Small Town Monsters stuff? Cause I will buy them.
Well, we have the UFOs Blu-ray. So with UFOs, we've started doing Blu-ray. So yes. Now we're talking about retroactively doing some Blu-rays of older releases, but I don't know what that will be yet and
Mm.
how to release them. I really want to do one for Mothman at Point Pleasant. Just do like a Mothman at Point Pleasant Blu-ray re-release. But your problem is like that stuff costs a lot of money, and I mean it's not been a great year for money. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, definitely like Mothman Legacy will be on Blu-ray. Bell Witch will be on Blu-ray. I'm actually approving the proofs for the Mothman Legacy Blu-ray tomorrow. So yeah,
Spicy.
there's Blu-rays coming for pretty much everything.
Oh, fire. Right on. I was just wondering, man, if you were gonna retroactively add some Blu-rays, but I know it might not be cost effective for
We have
sure.
2 Minerva Blu-rays laying around here somewhere. So
Hmm.
we did release Minerva originally on Blu-ray for some reason. Minerva's the one that was on Blu-ray. Um, I would love to see a re-release. Yeah, I'd love to see a re-release of Mothman, of Terror, and I don't know. Those are the 2 that I always go back to as like, man, I'd really like to get those on Blu-ray. Bray Road would probably be a good one to get on Blu-ray too. Um,
Oh, Bray Road's good, man. That one freaked me out.
yeah, I'd like to get that one on there.
Yeah, none of the On the Trail of.
Um, it would be awesome to get on the Trail of Bigfoot on there, or Champ. I mean, yeah, because those are so based around the geography that to have them on Blu-ray would be a good thing because the the landscapes and stuff alone are worth it. But no, we haven't talked about it yet. So at some point we'll try. I'm hoping. We just need to grow enough to be able to
For
do it
sure.
in the next couple of
No,
years.
I completely understand. Well, I want to thank you, Seth, for being on the show today. It's something I've dreamed about for a while.
Cool. Thanks for having me. Hey, send me a reel or whatever though, for real.
Oh, I will. Oh, I will. Did you want to plug anything? You want to plug Small Town Monsters or your podcast, Monsteropolis?
You just did Monsteropolis, monsteropolis.podbean.com, and then smalltownmonsters.com around like Facebook and all that stuff too. Oh, and like for people that have been asking when our stuff's going back on Amazon Prime, a lot of the titles came off Prime, like Bray Road and Tearing the Skies. They're not free on Prime right now. I still don't know. So there might not be any of that older stuff free too soon. On the other hand, I've also heard 3 months, so it could be coming in the next 3 months. So we'll have to see what happens.
Well, that's why you got to buy the DVDs. Just saying.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you guys for listening to the episode. If you guys liked this episode, be sure to subscribe to the podcast, share it with your friends. You can check us out on all the social medias. That's at Cryptid Campfire on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. We also have a Patreon for exclusive episodes. If you guys want to get extra cryptid content, join our Patreon for $5 a month. You get at least 2 exclusive episodes every month, along with an exclusive wallpaper drawn by our very own Alex Daikaiju. In addition, and I think that covers it. Check out Small Town Monsters if you guys haven't, and I'll see you guys next time with some brand new smacking episodes. Peace.
This podcast is a part of Straight Up Strange Productions. Discover more shows like this one at straightupstrange.com.